Welcome back to History with a Twist, the podcast where we dig deep into the strange, unexpected, and utterly bizarre moments of the past. I'm your host, Hans, and today we are taking a wild ride through some of the weirdest events in history that you've probably never heard of. Now, we all know history can be filled with incredible, dramatic, and inspiring stories. Epic battles, scientific breakthroughs, and revolutions that shaped the world. But what about the odd, the ridiculous, and the downright unexplainable? These are the moments that we are focusing on today. Some of these events are so bizarre, they sound like they were ripped straight from a Hollywood script. Yet, they are 100% real. And today, we're diving into them, separating fact from legend and uncovering the truth behind some of history's weirdest moments. So sit back, grab your favorite drink, and get ready for an episode filled with unbelievable yet true tales from the past. This is History with a Twist, Episode 2, Weirdest Events You Have Never Heard of. Let's start off with a war so strange, it barely sounds real. The Great Emu War of 1932. Yes, you heard that right. A war against emus, a type of bird. Here's what happened. After World War I, Australian soldiers were given land to farm in Western Australia. Sounds great, right? But there was one problem. Emus. Thousands of them. After World War I, many Australian soldiers were given land in Western Australia to take up farming. Sounds great, right? New land, new opportunities. What could go wrong? Well, imagine waking up one morning, walking outside, and finding 20,000 emus marching through your crops like an unstoppable feathery army. These birds weren't just passing through. They were ravaging farmland, gobbling up wheat, and trampling everything in sight. Farmers were in panic mode, and so they turned to the government for help. Now, if this were today, maybe they'd try some advanced fencing or biological deterrence. But in 1932, the answer was simple. Send in the military. In November 1932, Australian soldiers arrived, armed with Lewis machine guns, ready for battle. Their plan? Wipe out the emus and save the crops. Simple, right? Except emus are not simple creatures. These birds are fast and smart. When the soldiers opened fire, the emus scattered in all directions. Dodging bullets like expert escape artists, they ran in unpredictable patterns, making it nearly impossible to aim. Some birds even took multiple bullets and kept running. Can you imagine being a trained soldier, firing a machine gun, and watching a bird just shake it off and keep going? After firing thousands of rounds and barely making a dent in the emu population, the military had to rethink their strategy. At one point, they mounted machine guns on moving trucks, hoping to chase the emus down. Sounds like a great idea, right? Wrong. The rough terrain made driving and shooting at the same time nearly impossible. Meanwhile, the emus, being the clever creatures they are, they just ran in different directions, completely outmaneuvering the soldiers. Finally, after weeks of frustration, the government made a decision. Retreat. Yes, the Australian military, one of the most well-trained forces in the world, was defeated by a flock of birds. One officer even admitted, unquote, "If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world." Quote. So, what happened next? Well, the farmers had to find other ways to keep emus away from their crops. Eventually, they built better fences, proving that sometimes the best defense isn't a machine gun. It's just a really good fence. The Great Emu War remains one of the strangest conflicts in history, a hilarious and humbling reminder that nature always finds a way to fight back. So, next time you see an emu, give it a little salute. It might just be a veteran on one of history's most ridiculous battles. Now, if you thought losing a war to birds was weird, wait until you hear about a plague that made people dance. That's right, folks. In 1518, a town in what is now France faced an outbreak that had nothing to do with disease or war. Instead, it made people dance non-stop. Some danced for days, some for weeks, and some danced to death. Sounds crazy, right? Well, let's dive into the dancing plague of 1518. Picture this. It's the summer of 1518 in Strasbourg, France. Life is normal. People are going about their daily business when suddenly a woman named Frau Trophea steps into the street and starts dancing. Now, you might think, okay, maybe she was just having a good time. But here's the thing, she didn't stop. Hours turned into days, and she kept going, moving as if possessed by some invisible force. And before long, others joined in. Within a week, dozens of people were caught in this strange, uncontrollable dance. Then, within a month, hundreds. Now, this wasn't some kind of medieval street party. People weren't dancing because they wanted to. They physically could not stop. They danced to the point of collapse. Some died from exhaustion, others suffered strokes or heart failure. And here's where things get even crazier. You'd think the town leaders would try to stop the dancing, right? Maybe lock people inside or call in the doctors. Nope, their solution was more dancing. Yep, they thought the best way to cure this plague was to let the dancers dance it out. They even hired musicians to play upbeat tunes, hoping it would help people move through the madness. Instead of stopping the crisis, this only made it worse. Imagine being one of the normal townspeople, walking through the streets and seeing hundreds of people trapped in a dance they can't escape. And the authorities? They're just like, yep, let's get some music going. That should fix it. To this day, historians aren't completely sure what caused the dancing plague of 1518. But there are a few theories. One theory is called mass hysteria. Sometimes when people experience extreme stress, fear, or hardship, strange psychological reactions spread like a virus. And considering this was the Middle Ages, where famine, disease, and suffering were common, people were definitely under a lot of stress. Another theory, ergo poisoning. This happens when people eat moldy rye bread contaminated with a fungus that causes hallucinations, muscle spasms, and convulsions. Basically kind of like a medieval LSD trip, except no one knew what was happening. Or maybe something supernatural was at play. Who knows? Eventually, the dancing slowed down. No one really knows why, maybe exhaustion, maybe time. But just as mysteriously as it began, the strange epidemic disappeared. Life in Strasbourg went back to normal, and the event became a bizarre piece of history. Wars have been fought over land, power, and religion. But have you ever heard of a war caused by a stray dog? Now, I know what you're thinking. How does a dog start a war? Well, buckle up, because this story is as ridiculous as it is real. Let's first start with a border incident that changed everything. In 1925, Greece and Bulgaria already had rocky relations. Their shared border was tense, and past conflicts made both sides very suspicious of each other. Then one day, a Greek soldier's dog accidentally ran across the border into Bulgaria. The soldier naturally chased after it, but here's where things took a dark turn. Bulgarian troops, already on high alert, saw the soldier running into their territory and assumed he was launching an invasion. So, they shot him. And that, my friends, is when things spiraled out of control. The moment word reached Greece that one of their soldiers had been killed, the country was so furious. And instead of resolving things with diplomacy, Greece went for a more dramatic approach. They declared war. Greek forces stormed into Bulgarian territory, occupying towns and attacking soldiers. The fighting lasted 11 days and left dozens of people dead. Think about that for a second. An entire military invasion sparked by a dog. At this point, the world was watching, probably thinking, are they really doing this over a dog? Thankfully, the League of Nations, kind of like the early version of the United Nations, stepped in. After reviewing the situation, they declared Greece the aggressor and ordered an immediate ceasefire. Greece was forced to withdraw its troops and pay compensation to Bulgaria. And just like that, the war ended. So, what can we learn from the War of the Stray Dog? First, miscommunication matters. A simple misunderstanding combined with existing tensions can turn into a full-blown crisis. Second, maybe don't chase your dog into enemy territory. And finally, diplomacy is key. If Greece and Bulgaria had simply talked it out instead of reaching for their weapons, this whole thing could have been avoided. So, the next time your pet runs off, just be grateful you don't live near a tense military border. Sometimes history isn't just weird, it's downright eerie. Tonight, we're heading to a remote, windswept island off the coast of Scotland, an island that still holds one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. The year was 1900. 3 lighthouse keepers, Thomas Marshall, James Ducat, and Donald MacArthur, vanished without a trace. No bodies, no witnesses, just an abandoned lighthouse, and a chilling logbook that hinted at something strange. So, what happened to the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers? Was it the sea? Madness? Something supernatural? Let's dive in. Imagine this. You're a sailor, part of the relief crew sent to check on the lighthouse. You arrive expecting to be greeted by the keepers, but instead, you get silence. You step inside, the lighthouse is empty, the table is set for a meal, but there's no one to eat it. The clocks have stopped. The keepers' coats are missing, suggesting that they left in a hurry. But why? And then, you read the logbook. At first, the entries seem normal. Weather reports, routine maintenance. But then they take a very dark turn. One entry speaks of a powerful storm. Another mentions that men being unusually anxious. And then, the strangest part. One of the keepers, MacArthur, a hardened sailor is described as crying. Now, if you know anything about lighthouse keepers, you'll know that these guys were tough. They had to be. They lived in isolation, surrounded by the brutal sea. So what could have scared them so much? Here's the chilling part. No storms were recorded in the area at that time. What happened? There are a few possible explanations and theories. One of it is that a rogue wave hit the island. If the men had gone outside, maybe to secure equipment, they could have been swept away in an instant. Another idea, maybe one keeper fell into the sea, and the others died trying to save him. Then there's the darker theory. What if there was a fight? Isolation can do strange things to people. Could tensions have boiled over into violence? And of course, there's the supernatural angle. Some believe the men were taken by something else. A ghost, a sea monster, maybe even aliens. Too far-fetched? Maybe. But with no bodies ever found and no solid evidence, who's to say for sure? To this day, the disappearance of the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers remains unsolved. The lighthouse still stands, its beam cutting through the night, guarding an empty island, a place where 3 men vanished without a trace. So, what do you think happened? Let me get your opinion. Was it the sea? A tragic accident? Or something, more sinister? Until then, keep your lights on, and don't wander too far into the dark. And that's a wrap on today's episode of History with a Twist. We've explored wars started by birds and dogs, danced through unexplained plagues, and uncovered eerie disappearances. But there are so many more weird and wild moments from history waiting to be told. Now I want to hear from you. Have a bizarre historical event you think we should cover? Drop us a comment, send a message, or tag us on social media. Who knows? Your suggestion might be featured in an upcoming episode. If you enjoyed today's dive into the weird and wonderful, make sure to subscribe and leave a comment. It helps us keep bringing you the most fascinating and sometimes downright ridiculous stories from the past. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and remember, history is always stranger than fiction.